In the Middle Ages, a queen's marriage was never her choice. Love was a dangerous luxury, and for some women a deadly one. Yet there were queens who dared to follow their hearts, and among them, none was more legendary than Eleanor of Aquitaine. Born in 1122, Eleanor was one of the wealthiest and most powerful women of her time. As the Duchess of Aquitaine, she controlled vast lands in France. At just 15 years old, she married Louis VII of France, becoming Queen of France overnight. On paper, it was the perfect match, a young, radiant duchess and a pious king. In reality, it was a prison of cold formality. Louis was deeply religious, more monk than monarch. He wanted a humble, obedient wife who would quietly accept her role. Eleanor, however, was fiery, intelligent, and passionate. She loved poetry, music, and the bold culture of the troubadours, knights who sang of courtly love. She thrived in the lively courts of southern France, where stories of romance and chivalry filled the air. Paris, by comparison, was suffocating. Whispers soon spread that Eleanor was too close to her knights. During the Second Crusade, she accompanied Louis to the Holy Land. But even on this holy journey, rumors followed her. Chroniclers hinted at an affair with her uncle, Raymond of Antioch, a man described as charming and magnetic. Whether true or not, the gossip was enough to stain her reputation at the French court. Eleanor's independence clashed constantly with Louis's devotion to the church. She wanted freedom, excitement, and love. He wanted discipline and obedience. Their marriage unraveled in bitterness and suspicion. By 1152 it was annulled, an extraordinary scandal for the time. A queen had cast off her king, and tongues wagged across Europe. But Eleanor was not done. Just months later, she married Henry Plantagenet, the future King Henry II of England. She became Queen of England, adding even more power to her already legendary name. Yet her passion for life and for love never faded. At Henry's court, Eleanor surrounded herself with poets, musicians, and knights who celebrated the ideals of chivalry and romance. Her court at Poitiers became famous as the birthplace of courtly love, where stories of secret romances between ladies and knights were performed and encouraged. Some historians believe Eleanor herself lived such romances, though evidence is scarce. What is certain is that she inspired generations of tales about forbidden love. But Eleanor's boldness came at a cost. Her marriage to Henry II was fiery and often violent. Henry was unfaithful, taking mistresses openly, while Eleanor may have sought comfort in the company of others. The queen who had once been whispered about in France was now accused of encouraging rebellion against her own husband. Eventually, Henry imprisoned her for more than a decade. And yet, Eleanor endured. She lived long enough to see her sons, Richard the Lionheart and John, become kings. She outlived 2 husbands, survived scandal after scandal, and carved her place in history as one of the most remarkable women of the Middle Ages. Her story was not one of quiet obedience but of passion, rebellion, and survival. She may never have admitted to forbidden love outright, but the rumors that surrounded her tell us what society feared most. A queen who refused to be silent, who refused to live without desire. Eleanor of Aquitaine became a legend because she embodied what was forbidden. Her life showed that even queens, trapped in golden cages, could still dream of love and dare to reach for it. If Eleanor of Aquitaine was remembered for her fiery independence, Isabella of France was remembered for something darker: betrayal, scandal, and a forbidden love that nearly destroyed a king. Born in 1295, Isabella was the daughter of the powerful King Philip IV of France. At just 12 years old, she was married off to Edward II of England, a union meant to secure peace between France and England. But peace was fragile, and Isabella's marriage was far from happy. Edward II was unlike other kings. He cared little for the art of ruling and far more for his personal favorites. The most infamous of these was Piers Gaveston, a flamboyant nobleman whom Edward adored. Their relationship, whether it was friendship, brotherhood, or something more, consumed Edward's attention. Isabella, the young queen, was left humiliated. At banquets, Edward would lavish gifts and honors on Gaveston, while ignoring his wife. Chroniclers wrote that Isabella was often seated below Gaveston at feasts, a shocking insult for a queen. The court whispered, and foreign dignitaries sent mocking reports home. Isabella had power in name, but no affection from her husband. When Gaveston was eventually executed by rebellious nobles, Isabella might have hoped her marriage would improve. Instead, Edward found new favorites, the Despencer family, who dominated his court and shut Isabella out even further. Isolated and insulted, Isabella began to plot. During a diplomatic mission to France, she met Roger Mortimer, a handsome and ambitious English baron who had escaped from prison after rebelling against Edward. Their connection was immediate and dangerous. Soon, Isabella and Mortimer became lovers, a scandal that shook both France and England. The Queen of England, consort of a reigning king, had taken a rebel as her partner. But this was more than romance, it was revolution. Together, Isabella and Mortimer raised an army. In 1326, they invaded England, supported by discontented nobles. Edward II, abandoned by his allies, fled. He was captured and forced to abdicate in favor of his teenage son, Edward III. Isabella and Mortimer ruled in the young king's name, their forbidden love now transformed into political dominance. For a brief time, Isabella was at the height of power, openly living with her lover as the effective Queen of England. But power built on scandal rarely lasts. The young Edward III grew resentful of Mortimer's influence and his mother's affair. In 1330, he led a coup against them. Mortimer was executed, hanged as a traitor. Isabella was spared death, but she was placed under house arrest, her legacy forever marked by betrayal. History remembers her as the she-wolf of France, a queen who dared to defy her husband, take a lover, and overthrow a king. To some, she was monstrous. To others, she was courageous. But her story shows the danger of forbidden love in the Middle Ages. For Isabella, passion became politics, and politics became treason. Not every forbidden love in the Middle Ages was carried out in shadows and betrayals. Some were hidden in words, wrapped in poetry, and whispered in the delicate lines of verse. Few queens embodied this more than Marguerite of Navarre, a woman who dared to write about passion in a world that demanded her silence. Marguerite was born in 1492, the sister of Francis I of France, one of the most powerful kings of his age. Intelligent, educated, and politically astute, she was married young, as most noblewomen were. Her first marriage to Charles IV of Alsace was cold and loveless. But Marguerite found her escape not in open rebellion, but in art. From an early age, she loved books, philosophy, and poetry. Surrounded by scholars, she became a patron of writers and thinkers. But Marguerite herself was more than a patron. She was a creator. Her writings, particularly her collection known as the Heptameron, contained tales of love, desire, betrayal, and faith. Some were humorous, others tragic. But many carried the subtle voice of a woman who understood the pain of forbidden love. Historians debate whether Marguerite's poems were inspired by her own experiences. Some believe she had secret romances with poets and courtiers who admired her wit and beauty. Others think she simply gave voice to the emotions women around her were forced to bury. What is certain is that her writings shocked many at court. For a queen to speak of love, real, passionate love, was dangerous. Marriage was supposed to be about alliances and politics, not desire. A queen's duty was to her husband and her dynasty, not her heart. Yet Marguerite filled her works with stories of longing and heartbreak, of women trapped in duty who dreamed of freedom. To read her words was to glimpse the inner life of a woman who knew the weight of chains, yet still found a way to sing. Her life was not without scandal. At court, whispers followed her, that she was too close to certain poets, that her writings were too bold, that she risked the honor of her family. The church, too, grew uneasy with her sympathy for reformers and her questioning of tradition. But Marguerite was protected by her brother Francis, who admired her brilliance and shielded her from harsher punishments. In her second marriage to Henry II of Navarre, Marguerite found a bit more freedom. But even then, she used her pen as her truest weapon. Through poetry, she could express what society would never allow her to say aloud. Her words became the safe place where forbidden emotions lived. And so, Marguerite's forbidden loves, whether real or imagined, endured in her writing. She gave voice to countless women who were silenced. In her tales, queens, noblewomen, and even peasants confessed their passions, their fears, and their secret joys. Her legacy is unique among medieval queens. She was not remembered for rebellion or bloodshed, but for the courage to put love into words. In an age when even a smile could be judged immoral, she dared to let her heart speak. Marguerite of Navarre teaches us that forbidden love was not always about scandal or treason. Sometimes it was about the quiet resistance of a pen, the bravery of writing down feelings that could never be lived openly. Forbidden love in the Middle Ages could be thrilling, but it was also perilous. Few stories show the danger more clearly than that of Catherine Howard, the young Queen of England whose secret romance cost her not only her crown, but her life. Catherine was born around 1523 into a powerful but struggling branch of the Howard family. As a girl, she was sent to live in the household of her step-grandmother, where discipline was loose and young girls often entertained gentlemen visitors. Even before she reached the court, Catherine had been drawn into romances that would later haunt her. In 1540, at about 17 years old, Catherine was chosen to marry King Henry VIII, the infamous monarch who had already divorced 2 wives and executed another. Henry was nearly 50, overweight, and in poor health. Catherine was beautiful, lively, and barely more than a child. To Henry, she was a dazzling prize. Young, cheerful, and seemingly innocent. At first, Catherine played her role perfectly. She was adored at court, her youth bringing new life to the aging king. But beneath the glittering gowns and jewels, Catherine carried secrets. Before her marriage, she had been involved with 2 men, her music teacher, Henry Mannix, and a young courtier, Francis Dereham. Both relationships had been improper for a girl of her standing, and both would later resurface with devastating consequences. Even as queen, Catherine longed for companionship closer to her own age. At court, she found herself drawn to Thomas Culpeper, a handsome young gentleman of the king's chamber. Their meetings began in whispers and glances, but soon turned into secret late-night encounters, arranged with the help of Catherine's ladies-in-waiting. For a time, the affair remained hidden, but rumors spread quickly in the treacherous world of Henry's court. Enemies of the Howard family seized the opportunity to bring the queen down. Letters were discovered, witnesses questioned, and soon Catherine's past romances came to light. When Henry learned of her betrayal, his fury was unmatched. He had once called Catherine his rose without a thorn. Now he saw her as the ultimate humiliation, a young queen who had mocked him by giving her heart to another. In November 1541, Catherine was arrested. Her alleged lovers were tortured and executed. Catherine herself was imprisoned in the Tower of London, accused of treason through adultery. She was only 19 years old. On February 13, 1542, Catherine Howard was led to the scaffold. Witnesses said she looked terrified but composed. Her final words were simple. She declared she had wronged the king and prayed for mercy. Moments later, the axe fell. Catherine's story is one of the most tragic examples of forbidden love. Unlike Eleanor of Aquitaine or Marguerite of Navarre, she had no poems, no legends, no time to turn her passion into legacy. She was remembered instead as a warning that a queen's heart was never truly her own, and that love could be as deadly as treason. Her brief, shining life reminds us of the terrible cost of defying the rules of her world. Catherine Howard was not the first queen to risk everything for love, and she would not be the last. Not all forbidden loves ended in tragedy. Some became powerful, shaping kingdoms from behind the throne. Few women embody this better than Agnes Sorel, the first officially recognized royal mistress of France, a woman whose love affair with a king changed court politics forever. Agnes was born around 1422 into a minor noble family. She was not destined for greatness, but her beauty and charm set her apart. Described as having luminous skin, sparkling eyes, and a graceful figure, she captivated everyone she met. By her late teens, she had entered the service of Isabella of Lorraine, queen consort of René of Anjou. It was through this position that she was introduced to King Charles VII of France. Charles VII was a weary monarch, scarred by years of conflict in the 100 Years' War. His reign was marked by uncertainty, betrayal, and the lingering shadow of England's power in France. Yet when he met Agnes, something in him awakened. Their relationship quickly deepened, and though it was never sanctified by marriage, Agnes became the love of his life. At court, her presence was both scandalous and magnetic. Queens were supposed to represent chastity and political alliances, while mistresses were meant to remain in the shadows. Agnes defied this order. She walked the court openly, adorned in gowns of silk and velvet, wearing jewels that rivaled those of the queen. She even popularized daring new fashions, low-cut bodices that revealed more of the female figure than ever before. Nobles whispered in outrage, but they could not look away. Charles adored her, showering her with lands, titles, and wealth. But more than that, he listened to her. Agnes Sorel was no mere ornament. She offered counsel, encouraged the king to act decisively, and played a part in restoring his confidence at a time when France desperately needed leadership. Many historians credit her influence with inspiring Charles to reclaim lost territories and strengthen the French crown. Of course, her power made her enemies. Members of the court resented her audacity and feared her sway over the king. Some accused her of witchcraft, others of greed. But Charles defended her fiercely, a rare thing for a medieval king, who could have dismissed her at any time. Tragically, Agnes's life was cut short. In 1450, at the age of only 28, she died suddenly after giving birth. For centuries, rumors claimed she had been poisoned by jealous rivals at court. Modern studies of her remains found traces of mercury, suggesting she may indeed have been murdered. Yet even in death, her legacy endured. Agnes Sorel proved that forbidden love could transcend scandal, turning into influence, even into power. She became the model for later royal mistresses across Europe, women who would shape politics from behind the throne. Her story reminds us that not all forbidden romances were hidden tragedies. Some became partnerships that changed history. Agnes, the Dame de Butte, was remembered not just as a mistress, but as a queen in all but name. Through the stories of Eleanor of Aquitaine, Isabella of France, Marguerite of Navarre, Catherine Howard, and Agnes Sorel, we have seen the many faces of forbidden love in the Middle Ages. Some stories ended in scandal, others in blood, and a few in power and influence. Together, they reveal not only the hidden desires of queens but also the unforgiving world in which they lived. Medieval queens were never truly free. Their marriages were political contracts, their bodies symbols of alliances, and their lives bound by duty. Love, in such a world, was not a gift but a danger. For a queen to follow her heart meant breaking rules written by kings, priests, and entire kingdoms. Yet again and again, women dared to take the risk. Eleanor of Aquitaine turned whispers of scandal into a legend of independence, defying two kings and shaping the destiny of England and France. Isabella of France turned passion into rebellion, toppling a king and ruling beside her lover before being remembered as the she-wolf. Marguerite of Navarre poured forbidden emotions into poetry, leaving behind verses that gave voice to silenced women. Catherine Howard paid the ultimate price, executed as a teenager for following her heart. And Agnes Sorel, the mistress who became almost a queen, proved that even love outside of marriage could transform politics and inspire a monarch. What connects these women is not only their passion but their courage. They lived in a world that demanded silence, obedience, and sacrifice. Yet they sought joy, intimacy, and freedom, things every human being craves. Their forbidden loves remind us that queens were not only crowns and jewels. They were women with hearts that longed to beat freely. But their stories also show the cost of defiance. A secret glance, a hidden letter, a stolen meeting in the night. These small acts of love could destroy reputations, families, and dynasties. Forbidden love was thrilling, but it was also perilous. In the Middle Ages, the line between romance and treason was razor-thin. And yet, perhaps that is why these stories endure. They reveal the tension between power and vulnerability, between duty and desire. They remind us that history is not only battles and treaties, but also the beating hearts of those trapped inside gilded cages. The legacy of these forbidden loves is not just scandal. It is resilience. Eleanor survived imprisonment. Isabella turned disgrace into survival. Marguerite left behind words that still move us centuries later. Even Catherine Howard, silenced so young, forces us to remember the cruelty of a world that punished a teenager for love. And Agnes Sorel proved that love, even when condemned, could inspire kings and shape nations. Today, their stories continue to fascinate because they feel timeless. Who among us has not longed for love where it was not allowed? Who has not dreamed of breaking free from expectations, even at great risk? These queens remind us that love, real, flawed, dangerous love, has always been the most human of rebellions. As we leave their stories behind, we should remember that the Middle Ages were not only an era of darkness and control. They were also a time of passion, courage, and resilience. Queens were judged for their choices, but through their forbidden loves, they claimed moments of freedom in a world that denied them everything else. And so, when we think of medieval queens, let us not only see crowns and thrones. Let us see women who dared to feel, who dared to risk, and who dared to love, even when the whole world told them it was forbidden.